I'm Ben Data, CEO of Food Maven and a Denver Startup Week co-founder. Denver Startup Week has always been about community. And today, it's more important than ever to show how we can come together to create opportunities out of the challenges that we face. Opportunities for every member of the community. Before we dive in, we want to say a special thank you to our 2020 Denver Startup Week sponsors who make it all possible. Thanks to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero. And our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and the Public Works, Capital One Café, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. You help make all of this possible.
Hey, Denver Startup Week, welcome to day 4. I know many of you are experiencing your first session of the week, but so many of you have been with us for the first 3 days. We're glad to have you back for day 4. We've gone virtual this year and we've gone global. We're really excited about the content, but we're really excited about the engagement. You all have been so engaged on the chat, asking great questions, engaging in social media. Thank you. We have a lot to celebrate about entrepreneurship. We at the very core at Denver Startup Week believe that great companies build great cities, they build great countries. And so you are all doing great work and getting us through all the challenges we're facing in our communities today. Share your experiences on Den Startup Week, #Den Startup Week, and make sure that you let everybody know what you're learning, who you're meeting, and how you're growing. Think big, be bold, and make great things happen. Today, we have an incredible guest. I'm so excited for you all to hear about the great things that he's been doing. Opportunity to learn. Be sure to put your questions in the chat. But let me start first by saying a huge thank you to Capital One. Capital One has been a big partner in terms of other civic engagement in our community, including the Downtown Denver Partnerships City Build program, but also supporting the Denver Startup Week this year as a sponsor of the developer track. So a big thank you to you. I'm going to turn it over to Nancy Lambert, who serves as the Engage Leader for Capital One. Over to you, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Welcome, Denver Startup Week entrepreneurs. My name is Nancy Lambert, and I am an Engage Lead for the Capital One cafes right here in Denver, Boulder, and throughout the Central region. My work is really focused on community involvement and local partnerships. I am sure most of you have already visited our cafes, but as a brief overview, these places are designed for you. We're focused on empowering people to feel more confident in their relationship with money, whether that's through free money coaching sessions that help reshape your values and build a plan to succeed, or just come in to get your banking questions answered or some servicing done. And oh, by the way, we also have a great cup of coffee. And this year, for the first time, we are offering our free money coaching sessions virtually. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual fireside chat with another Denver resident and Capital One supporter, Ben Higgins. Ben is a former Bachelor star and a local business owner. He is joined by moderator Olivia Omega to speak about his experience as a Denver entrepreneur and how he's navigated being a small business owner in this time of COVID-19. We hope you enjoy this conversation.
All right. Welcome, Ben.
It's good to be here.
And welcome everyone out there across the world. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to just dive straight in because I have a whole huge list of questions here that I'm going to fire at you. But let's just start off by talking about your journey with Generous Coffee. How did you even get into that industry? What is the start of your coffee company?
Yeah, well, it's a long story, but I'm going to summarize it here and any follow-up, if anybody wants to reach out, they can. But When I was 15 years old, my family took me to Central America for the very first time. And they took me with our local church. And it was the first time in my life I'd seen extreme poverty. And it rocked my world and it rocked my friend's world. But on this trip, we went with a disaster relief organization, which is needed and necessary. But their strategy was to pass out boxes of food to people in these communities, and we left. And it confused me. It felt unsustainable. It felt weird. It felt like we were giving something and leaving, and there was no relationship. The next year we came back to those same communities, and the people were still as impoverished, still as hungry, without clean water as they were the year before. And so as a young teenager, my buddies and I all came back home, and I remember these talks. We were angry. We were confused. We were unable really to even function in our daily lives because we knew that there are people in Central America who were suffering at every moment of every day. And so my buddies and I got together, and we came up with an idea that we could build sustainable change in these communities by partnering with them. So, for example, we would go down, we would find plots of land that we would purchase. We would turn these into agriculture projects and make small businesses for these people to work. And then once they became profitable, we could hand them over to the community so that they could then continue to grow their businesses, continue to reinvest in their communities, buy clean water. And we would stay with them through the process, but it would really be about them leading us and not us leading them and not us going down just to give a handout. Well, this organization called Humanity and Hope United was really successful, and great things were happening, and tremendous stories were happening around these communities. But just like any nonprofit, if you're going to have a sustainable mission to your organization, you have to have a sustainable fundraising source, because if fundraising runs out, your projects go away, your mission goes away. And we couldn't predict 12 months in advance on what we were hoping to do for the next year. We couldn't even hardly predict a month in advance. So on a trip to Honduras in 2017, one of my buddies and I went down just to try to come up with an idea, some fundraising idea. And on this trip, we went to a coffee farm. We had never been to one. And as we were on this coffee farm, it just really felt like something about coffee called us. It was a product that brought people together. It was a product that most people consumed. There was no religious or geographic boundaries that really stopped people from drinking coffee. It was usually a personal choice. And we came back to the United States as two early 20-year-olds with the idea that we're going to start a business and sell coffee. Well, as this idea continued to percolate in our minds, I was then given the platform from the Bachelor of over 1 million people following me on social media. And so we really made this business a reality with the idea that we could bring people together through coffee, that we could use my platform to promote it. And then the most important part, I think, about Generous that needs to be known is our differentiator is that we donate 100% of the profits to organizations that are fighting human-facing injustice around the world. So it is a passion project for me as the president and CEO. I don't make a dime off of it. We do have employees that get paid, but 100% of our profits, which is typically 10% of our revenue, is donated to organizations year over year.
That's amazing. That's incredible. And you talked about the passion and the purpose behind Generous Coffee. So how do you balance this? This is my favorite question. So I was going to ask it first so we can spend as much time as we need on here. But how do you balance and the challenge of having a purpose-driven organization, company that still has to thrive and succeed from a business standpoint? How do you balance that, especially if you're giving away 100% of the profits?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our modeling from the very beginning had to be very, very detailed. You have to, we're never going to be successful as a fundraising organization unless we stay alive as an organization. And so for us, we have different levers that we build in and pulled. So if we have X amount of sales per year, we know that built into our operating budget, we will be able to donate this amount. If sales dip, then our donation has to dip as well, which is unfortunate. And I hope to never have us get there. We haven't had to get there to this point, but that is a lever that we may have to pull. The biggest thing, to keep us a healthy organization for us is just like any business, we have to continue to grow so we can build in the efficiencies and the automation and the technology to continue to allow us a smaller operating budget so our margins can increase. I think on the back end of that, one of the ways that we are able to do this is we built in those margins to each product sold. So if we're selling coffee, if we're selling bracelets, or if we're selling mugs, within that, we have a built-in margin in every product that we know no matter what, we're going to be able to donate. And that has just been that way since the beginning. And it's probably the safest way, at least right now as a small business, for us to know that we're going to be able to donate at the end of the year.
That's great. And that seems like, obviously, that's one of the biggest challenges that you face, right? As running this company. What are some other challenges that you face within Generous Coffee in addition to that balance?
Well, I think that's the biggest. The one thing that has to be sacrificed in that is you have to find people that are passionate about the purpose. You also have to find a leadership team that's willing to volunteer their skill sets. Now, I hope one day this can be a full-time paid job for me. That is a hope and a desire. But one of the ways that we had to get started was by me sacrificing that income. And I think there's people out there willing to do that. We bootstrapped this. So we literally did a pre-order campaign for coffee in 2018. The money that we sold, we went and bought bags of coffee. We then delivered it to the homes of the people that bought it. And that's how we started operating as a company. I think for us, though, it's really about culture. We have to find people sold out on wanting to help and to come into kinship with other people. And when you do that, we still want to be generous to them as our employees. But we want to also find volunteers who are willing to advocate on our behalf. It's been one of our bread and butters is the ambassador program of 200 people across the country who advocate for a generous lifestyle. And then in the back end of that, advocate for a generous lifestyle by selling our products.
So you have these ambassadors, you said 200 across the country, volunteers, et cetera. You also have 2 co-founders. Is that right?
Yes.
How do you balance that relationship? And do all 3 of you have the same drive and passion that you personally do? Does that align? Does it sometimes get a little off kilter? How do you kind of manage that?
It's really my biggest lesson in starting this company has been, who do you surround yourself with? So it's great that I get to sit here and talk to you today. This is awesome. I know I'm here. I was lucky enough to be given a platform by being on The Bachelor. And hopefully through that, I've been able to be involved in some incredible things that I'm super excited to talk about. And I want to share with everybody I come in contact with. But my biggest lesson early on was I have to surround myself with people far greater than me. That our organization will only thrive if I can lead it with open hands, knowing that I'm hiring and bringing people into the organization that can do far greater things than I could ever do alone. Now, when it comes down to the founding relationship, we've had struggles. We've had arguments. And over time, I've learned that's healthy. We have open dialogue. I think it's just like most relationships that you're in. We see the fruit from these relationships by the depth that we can go. And the depth that we can go includes sometimes calling each other out, sometimes checking each other where our, on our strategies and decisions and where our intentions lie. That is not uncommon. I would not be surprised tomorrow to get an email from one of the founders saying, Ben, I'm questioning this. Please explain to me why you did it this way. And over time, I don't take offense to that anymore. I don't get defensive to that. I understand that's coming from a place of just wanting to see this organization move forward. And it's honestly exciting. I know they care enough about Generous and they care enough about me to have that depth in our relationship.
Tell us just a little bit more about Generous, just so we can wrap our heads around even the logistics of it. So you have 2 coffee shops.
Yeah, so we have a coffee shop in Golden, Colorado.
Okay.
It sits in the Tributary Market. So it's on 12th and Washington. And that was our flagship coffee shop. We have a coffee shop at 5th and Santa Fe. It sits in the Wayfinder co-op. So it's in a co-op facility. So in short, what Generous is we sell coffee. We're best known for our coffee. We also have apparel. We have mugs. We have bracelets. All of these products are socially responsible. They're made with stories behind them. For example, our mugs go back to clean water projects in Africa. Our apparel is made out of plastic water bottles, and they're made by women who are single mothers in Haiti. So all of our products have to have stories behind them. They have to be socially responsible. Our coffee is specialty grade. So it's the highest graded coffee you can get. If you want to buy Generous coffee, you're buying good coffee. If you don't think it's good, well, then try one of our other coffees.
I will have to test this and
please
report back.
It's all single origin and it's all traceable. So if anybody's out there watching right now and they're saying, hey, the coffee world is corrupt, it is 100%. And one of our missions behind the scenes that we don't even really talk about is we want to buy from the producers. We want to make sure to go and visit these producers to make sure they're getting fair wages. A little side note, for years, coffee producers would grow some of the best coffee in the world. They would sell it then to people around the world, and they would actually make pennies on the dollar for each harvest. And then, billion-dollar companies selling the coffee on the back end. Well, that's an injustice. That needs to stop. People that are growing your product should not be without clean water and without education and healthcare. And so for us, we're really trying to buy from the producer to make sure that they're getting fair wages, that their lives are increasing. And then we come back to the States. We roast in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is about 30 minutes from my hometown. We sell our coffee and distribute it from there. And then all of our products, like I said, on the back end, all of the profits are donated to nonprofits that are human focused, that are effective and efficient with their funds, and that have a sustainable model to them. So they want to see people not just get better, but continue to progress forward. And they want to stay in relationship with them until, the day that they say, hey, we're going to move on to the next because you're doing so well.
What's in the future for Generous then?
What I really hope personally, the future for Generous is I hope we can become a for-purpose brand that people recognize, and that we bring other organizations underneath that umbrella. So what I really hope for Generous is that it's a model that other businesses see and emulate and say, hey, we can still run a successful business. We can still put food on our tables. We can still do great things in the world of business. But our purpose is about whatever injustice we see. If it's conservation, if it's humans like us, if it's animals, whatever that is, that businesses will start to get the mindset that there is margin typically in your sales to do great things in this world. And as we said at the beginning, like, if businesses start to get that idea, I think we're going to see the world become a better place. I think we're going to see communities become a better place. And so my hope is in 5 years, 10 years, that Generous is still active, growing, moving, doing what we said we wanted to do from the beginning, but also a household name, and then a name that people come to know they're a safe place to learn from, and that they want to implement our model or a similar model into their business.
I definitely think that you as an example, Generous as an example, can create that tipping point too in the next 5 to 10 years. So like you said, it will be this groundswell of companies realizing, not even realizing, but taking their margins and putting them back into the communities that they serve. So with that being one of your passions as far as giving back to the community, start to talk about the entrepreneurial journey in deciding that you wanted to give back, and how that ties back to why you're here today. And we've mentioned Capital One, et cetera.
It's a crazy story. And it's great that I'm sitting here being able to tell it. For me, I think there was a worldview change when I went to Honduras, specifically when I was a teenager. There was something inside of me that shifted. There was something inside of me that was educated and became knowledgeable to the fact that people are suffering. Even saying those words today to you and going back to that time, like, it still is emotional to me. Because I remember the moment that I'll just tell this story and then I'll get into what Capital One did. And I won't get emotional, but I probably will, because I always do when I tell it. But there was a moment for me 2 years after Humanity and Hope started. We were in a community in Honduras, and I sat down with a lady who was 35. And we just finished putting in a water tank that offered clean water to the community about 6 months before that. And I was on a trip down there, and I was sitting next to her, kind of similar to you and I are. And I said, what has been the biggest change with clean water? Just curious. And she looked at me and she said, Ben, for the first time in 35 years of my life, I wake up without a stomach ache. I didn't even know I had a stomach ache until clean water was offered to me. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I can function in a world without having to rush to the restroom or to worry about my cramps and my pains. And I thought for a second at the gift that I've had to never have to deal with that. And unless I sat there in that moment and listened to those words, and I was gifted with the ability to sit next to her, I would never have had my heart broken. But then it's the action for me that takes place afterwards. That's just not enough. We just can't stop there. There are people out there still today that are hurting, that are suffering, that are crying out because there's been injustice in their lives. And for me, I just personally, because of my faith, also just because of my purpose in life and because of what I want my legacy to be, I I don't think I could function on a daily basis unless I knew that there was something greater beyond me that would be lasting, that I'm having a part of. And I believe that by giving back to these organizations, by sitting with people and coming into kinship with them and hearing their stories, I believe that in 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, there'll be a ripple effect of things that nobody will associate with me. Nobody will say, Ben did this. But there'll be something there that I helped start and create and that I was involved in that made life change. And so I just want to be, selfishly, maybe I just want to be a part of that. I want that to be something I get involved in. I want to get in the grit and the roots. So with that being said, I came off of the Bachelor, which was a great experience for me. But people don't know this. As a bachelor, you don't necessarily get paid a lot. People think you do. You don't. So I get off the Bachelor, and I left my job in software sales in Genesee, Colorado. And I was in this liminal space, this in between, this time of not really knowing what was next, and not really having any type of ability to even predict if I could afford my home. Not that I was in a terrible place, but I have an income. And that wasn't a great space to live in. A lot of people are living in that right now. It's a scary time. It's a weird time. And as I'm starting to pray and consider what's next and start to formulate the ideas around Generous and hoping that that could be my next job, but not knowing if I could get paid from or not, I get a phone call from Capital One asking if I would come into partnership with them to be an advocate and endorser for them. And I was already a Capital One card holder, so that wasn't hard for me to do. I enjoyed the card myself. And, you know, I tell this story because it's funny how something that Capital One had no clue what was going on in my life. They didn't know what I was trying to start and what I wanted to get involved in, what I was hoping to create. But this phone call changed everything because due to that partnership and due to that tie that I had with Capital One, I was able to start Generous, work for Generous for free, and have the income from Capital One to continue to put food on my table and continue to move forward on these projects that I cared about. Capital One, I mean, I don't think it happens without Capital One. I really don't think Generous exists without that phone call. And I shared that at an event last year at their headquarters because it's just something that I think needs to be known. You know, and ever since then, they've been a great partner to me as well. And they've been supportive of Generous, and they've allowed me to advocate for Generous at these events that we do together. And I've had a great time doing it. And so I think that answers your question, but Capital One came in at the beginning and really infused some income into my life so that Generous could happen and I could work for it for free so it could get off the ground.
That's incredible.
See
how that happens? Like that timing is incredible.
It's absolutely wild, and it should be known. It's those small things that you don't predict in life that come up out of nowhere that change the course of everything, and it really has for me.
So then why Denver? I know you moved here, you took a job at a software company, but why did you stay? You didn't have to stay in Denver.
Denver's home. It's weird. I'm from Indiana. I'm a single child. My parents are amazing, and I have a great relationship with them. I got to have a breakup, and the girl looked at me and said, "You'll never leave home, and that's why we need to break up." And so that was kind of my first jump to Denver. I was like, no, I'm going to leave home. And I took a job in Genesee. I was working that job for about 5 years. And like I said, I left it. And when I left it, I really didn't have a reason to be here anymore. But the people in Denver, the climate and the things that you can do, the activities, just continued to keep me here. And it pulled me here. Also, I was spending a ton of time in LA. And, you know, LA is great for its own reasons, but Denver was a place that felt just enough like like Indiana, and just enough like the West Coast, kind of had this good mix of everything and offered me enough that it just fits. And then over time, I have now invested in a couple restaurants here in Denver. So I've put my roots even further and further. In fact, my fiance will be moving out to Denver. We're going to stay here. It's home. And it's been good to me, and it's allowed me opportunities I never could have imagined. And it's been supportive of our shops, and it's been supportive of me personally. Denver's an incredible place.
That's the perfect segue to the next section is talking about these restaurants. So tell us a little bit about the restaurants. How did you fall into that industry? And then we all kind of know that brick and mortar period, but restaurants, it's a pretty tough.
It's a tough world.
Tough world out there. Yeah. So how are you faring?
Well, okay. So let me talk about brick and mortar for a second. So our shops, our coffee shops specifically, the one in South Denver is struggling. to be honest. A lot of lessons learned there. But we were built, Fifth of Santa Fe. It's a commuter district where people were going for art and working around there. There's a hospital nearby. We were really counting on that being a lot of foot traffic. And when COVID hit, foot traffic really slowed down. In fact, a ton for us. It's been hard, and we're still in the midst of that. We haven't gotten out of that yet. We've had to re-strategize and reformulate and really dive into who we're going to be down there and how we bring people in the door. So if you're watching and you're in Denver and you want a cup of coffee, please visit the shop. It'd mean a lot. But our coffee shop in Golden is doing well, and people have continued to come through. So yes, a tough time. I've learned a lot. Here's my story of the restaurants. There is a great friend of mine, Juan Padro, who's here in town. And he started out with a few partners at Highland Tap and Burger. And Highland Tap and Burger is near my home. And as a newbie to Denver, and I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have any friends out here, I would just hang out at Highland Tap and Burger. It was a nice place, good people, good drink, good food. And over time, I would tell Juan, hey, it's always been a dream of mine to be in the restaurant world. My dad started out there. I have great memories from restaurants as a kid with my grandparents, and kind of it's a place that's special to me. Bringing people together to eat and drink and be merry and break bread together is just a unique thing that doesn't get to happen in many other scenarios. And so I said, hey, if you ever have the opportunity, and if I ever have the financial ability to do it, I would absolutely love to get involved in a restaurant with you. And one day he called and he said, hey, we have this concept to bring really good Mediterranean food to Denver. Would you want to get involved? I said, I'm in. I'm in. And so I invested into Ashkara, which is up in the Highlands. And it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. In fact, here's another cool Capital One story. This one's true too. On opening night, I was doing a Venture Dome in Belmar. So it's Capital One's kind of experience that they do outside. And a couple executives from Capital One and a couple employees of Capital One were in town for it. And they actually came to opening night, which is friends and family, with me at Ashkara, which was incredible. And it was not planned. It just happened that way. So so there's some employees of Capital One out there probably watching this going, yeah, we were there. We were able to experience that. Well, Ashkara is doing well. We've been able to implement outdoor seating. We've been able to expand capacity. We've been able to kind of re-strategize our menu to kind of bring great quality food, but lower some food costs and get rid of some of the things that weren't selling, and moving people through the restaurant quicker and more effectively. But as Ashkara grew, then we had the opportunity to invest into Mr. Oso, which is in Rhino, in the old Populous building. And Mr. Oso has opened up and pretty much opened up right before COVID. And it's going well also, but we've had to expand outdoor seating. We've had to take drastic measures to make sure everybody's healthy and safe. We take everybody's temperature going inside. But there was months, and I know this is the case for many people across the U.S., where it was incredibly scary. I told my fiance at one point during COVID that, and I meant this, and I think it was good for me to get here, that everything that I've worked on and tried to build over the last 3 years felt like it was falling down around me in a couple month period of time. And it humbled me. It made me focus again. We were getting pretty fat and happy. We were doing pretty well. And it really switched a gear in me, kind of like it did when I was in Central America for the first time, where it shifted my worldview. It shifted my focus. It shifted how I saw things. And I think that shift has been important for us. It's been good for us. And it's also helped me relate with other small business owners who are struggling still. And we're, like I said, some of our shops are still struggling.
We have an incredible food scene here in Denver, and I'm from here, not born, but raised here in Denver, Colorado. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are watching now in the food industry, in the food scene, that can relate to what you're talking about. What advice do you have for them? Do you have any sort of, or encouragement as we head into Q4 and then into 2021, knowing that the effects of COVID are fairly long lasting? We're not going to wake up and this will be over.
Well, my advice would be, it's hard to give advice into something that none of us really know. And maybe that's where I'd start. is my words to anybody that's out there, that's working, that's struggling, that's even not struggling, is you're not alone. This isn't your fault. You aren't inept. You haven't failed. Nobody expected this, and nobody knows how to walk through it. Now, some people will get luckier than others. Luck is a big deal right now. Some people will fall into businesses and restaurants and coffee shops that are in great places that people can still come to, and they're still loyal, clientele that will support them. That's an incredible thing. And I think it's an incredible thing about Denver is I think Denver really goes out of the way to support, even when it's inconvenient. But for anybody out there that's sitting in the midst of chaos and confusion going, I don't know what's next, and I feel like I'm missing the mark, just know you're not alone, and it's not your fault. And that to start to refocus. One of the strategic things that we did is as soon as COVID really started to hurt us, we did start to implement those levers I was talking about. We really started to model out, if we start to drop in sales X%, what do we have to do? Who do we have to cut? What capital do we have to find? And we started to do that we really started to predict that for the next 2 years, even with the restaurants. So I'd say maybe the refocus is to start to implement those levers so that you have a clear path forward, or that you at least have an idea of if things get to where we hope they don't go, that you can pull those levers and try to keep it open. But there's not great advice that I have. I really can't sit here and say, this is what you've got to do. I hope for anybody out there who has a restaurant in Denver, Denver has a great food scene. Denver has a great entrepreneurial scene. I just hope we can find a way to get through it. And I think Denver can, because like I said, they're supportive and they care.
So on the other side of this, we are through COVID-19, things are rebounding.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you? Does that mean more restaurants potentially? We talked about kind of the future of Generous, but what about you as far as an entrepreneur and different business ventures?
Definitely. Yeah. If all of this, when it goes away and we're able to move forward into life, I really do dream of bringing people together to educate on for-purpose business. And I think that education falls in a couple categories. One is educating on the injustice around the world. So educating people to see and know that there is massive amounts of pain being suffered by a lot of people around the world. Then helping people see what kind of injustice they want to fight personally, because we need each other fighting all different sorts of things. And then helping them implement that into their strategies, helping them implement that into how they can give back financially and with time and resources. The other huge thing for me personally is Generous was just about to start a trip program. So I believe that it's great for you and I to sit here and talk about all of these things, but a lot of people are talking these days. The best thing we can do is see it, feel it, sit next to people experiencing it. And so I really want to bring people down to the places that we're working with, to the communities around the world, and have people all over the US coming with us to educate them. And I believe once they see it and they feel it and they know it's something worth pursuing, that they'll be the best advocates. So when COVID goes away, one of my goals is to get thousands of people moving across the world, not to change culture, but to ask these people, what do you need? What do you want? And what do you dream of? And working with them to help them get there. I just can't imagine. If I can be a part of that, like if I can sit in those times and sit in those meetings and look at somebody in the eye who comes back to the United States and says, my world has been rocked, I don't know what to do. And I can say, no, let's sit through this. This is good. I can't imagine a better way to live my life.
That's amazing. That's great. You alluded to this a little bit earlier, but what if, so people are out here watching and they say, well, I'm not a purpose-driven business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for profit. Whatever. This really doesn't pertain to my business model or the way I run my business. What do you say to those people who, or how do you take this notion of bringing purpose to a business that, at its core, at its essence, is
Mm-hmm.
for profit or doesn't have that social purpose behind it?
Yeah. Well, I have a theory that with the people living in this world today, not just this generation coming up, but the people living on Earth today, that we have an opportunity to read through the lines more than we ever have, that we're able to get more information than we ever have. And I also believe that people are more socially responsible today than they ever have, or at least they want to be. and they're trying to be. And so I think any business out there has to have some type of social responsibility behind them if they want to be successful and have a long lifespan. You see it, you're hearing about it more and more. I think it's Toyota that has a commercial that talks, at the very end, they say 2% of all sales or something like that is going to this organization. I just think that's going to be the model. And I think that's going to be the new wave. I have a theory that most businesses are going to have to get on board with that. If that still goes, hey, that's still not for me, but I care as a person, then I would say awesome. That each human has a value and a purpose in this world, that each person matters and they're not alone in this world. And I just, maybe I'm hard-headed to this, but I just believe that every human has a responsibility to care for other humans well, care for other humans in your community, in your neighborhoods, in your city, in your state, and to listen to them, sit with them in their pain and their oppression and just listen to their stories, and then hopefully take action to help them, to sit with them and learn from them, to be educated by them. Maybe the one thing you can do is just to start to become educated to the injustices around the world, just so you have it, in your heart somehow. But my response is I'm not sitting here shaming, and I don't want to guilt any business and saying you have to turn this way. I believe it's a good move strategically. I believe it's going to be kind of the new wave. I think it'd be smart. But even beyond that, I think I would say that each person has a unique purpose and value to give back and to care for others and to love others well. And I hope that everybody out there listening can feel like they have enough value and enough purpose in their life to do that.
There's actually a research study that just came out probably a couple months ago talking about millennials in the workplace, and millennials, and that term is just so.
Yeah, it doesn't have a great connotation to it.
It doesn't have a great connotation, but it's a 20-year span. Yep. So it's like I'm literally an old millennial. Yep. But it says millennials and their purchasing power and the way they make decisions about buying is shifting more and more towards companies that have some values and purpose and social responsibility to them. So I agree that it is a good business move. And
I mean, it's our differentiator. Like at Generous, there's a lot of coffee companies out there. There's a lot of roasteries out there. There's a lot of great coffee shops. There's probably one in every corner in this city. I get that we are competing in a market that is saturated, but our differentiator is that our model, our heart, our mission is to give back. We did that because one, it's what we were out to do at the very beginning. It's what we were trying to find a way to fundraise for these organizations. And two, I believe that we'll sell our coffee through the stories we tell. And these stories have to be accurate. They have to be transparent. They have to be effective. They have to be efficient. And we have no problem in showing you our books financially or showing you the stories that we're working with. That is what makes us different. That's what makes us stand out. That's what will get people walking through the doors of our coffee shop. Yes, we have good coffee. I believe that. Scientifically, I can prove that. Specialty grade. But to get people there, we have to tell these stories. That is how we market our company. So I believe that, and we're hoping for that. I hope millennials I hope the people living here on this planet right now, they will take a second out of their day to maybe drive a mile further and say, we're going to go to Generous today because we know that our purchase is giving back.
Dive in a little bit more about storytelling. So it's kind of, I'm a brand strategist, so my background is that, and there's this buzzword of storytelling. Everyone's storytelling. You have to tell your story, tell stories. How have you done that in a way that's successful? And what do you mean by when you keep saying telling the stories?
Yeah. So one is our biggest obstacle in telling our stories is we have to keep them simple. So there's a lot of complexity to stories. Your story is complex. My story is complex. I could sit here today and give you a 20-minute overview of my life up to this point, but it wouldn't include the small details that have got me here today. So we have to be simple. We have to be clear in our messaging. So we have to be direct in our messaging. We have to keep buzzwords that are consistent within Generous: fighting injustice, human focused, effective and efficient, sustainable. Those are things you hear me say a lot because they are buzzwords within our organization. If you are part of Generous's community, you would know what that means. The other part of that is, I think one of the things we try to do is be as transparent as possible. So one of our strategies with storytelling is we'll tell you the stories that's happening on the ground with the people that we're working with. But then I want to offer you to come see it yourself. One of the things that I think as a business owner, what I want to do is get as many people involved as possible. If you're just a purchaser of Generous Coffee, if you're just a subscription purchaser where you say, I'll get Generous Coffee there once a week to my house because I just like the coffee and I believe in the mission. Great. But then I'm going to ask you to go one step further and come with us. I get nothing out of that, but I think you will. And I think you'll come back and tell your friends and family. So I want people to experience these stories. I want them to feel like they're involved in these stories. I want them to feel and touch and smell these stories. For us also, we are human focused. So we care about humans. Like that is our lane. I love animals. I love the environment a lot. But for Generous, we are human focused. And we tell these stories through the lens of the people that we are working with. And I said a little bit ago, but we tell the stories in a format that says, hey, what do you need? What do you want? What do you dream of? And then we come back and we communicate that to our consumers. And that's about as simple as we get. If you listen to our videos, if you hear me speak, it always comes from a place of attacking what are the needs of the people? What are the wants of the people? And then long-term, what are their dreams? Like, where are we trying to go with them? And I believe that will sell it. I believe people will say, yeah, I agree. And that's our storytelling model. I'm sure there's others, but that's what we've stuck to at this point.
That's great. This is awesome. Thank you.
I'm having a blast. If you can't tell, I like this. This is good.
There's, so you told us the story about your shoes.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Yes.
So I have a quick story.
These shoes.
I'm going to make fun of you. I'm like, can you guys get a shot? Do you have a shot of the shoes? I love the shoes.
Yeah. These shoes are 10 years old. They're actually from the Bachelor, or no, they're not. They became before the Bachelor. My mom and fiance are probably watching this. And anytime I do a live television appearance, I wear these shoes because at home right now, they are so mad at me. They're so angry. Like they're fuming, like legitimately. This isn't funny for them. It's great for me.
Awesome. Okay. So I have a quick story and it relates to you. So bear with me about my jeans. Okay. So I was asking my daughter, last night I was asking my daughter, can I borrow your jeans? And she's like, why? And I was like, oh, I got this interview tomorrow and I, want to up my game a little bit. And, I'm just interviewing this guy, Ben Higgins. And she's like the Ben Higgins? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know how many Ben Higgins are. I don't know. Like, yeah. She's like, from the Bachelor? Yes. And she says, he lives in Denver. And I was like, how did you know that? And so she literally goes and I was like, he owns a really incredible coffee company. She's like, I know. and then she says to me, and he owns restaurants. I was like, how do you know this? She gave me the whole, so it was like an hour conversation. So my whole research for this interview basically was my daughter telling me all of just awesome. The ins and outs and all of the stuff. And so she's just like, is he like for real going to be there? Or is this online? And so that's how she ended up here today. She's like, Mom, can I please come?
Oh, I'm glad she did.
And I was like, yes. And then she's like, okay, you can wear my jeans. And I was like, okay. But thinking about that, I have a purpose in this storytelling.
I like that story.
Thinking about this, what is something, because you've been in the limelight and the spotlight, and because we have the Google and all of these things, what's something that people don't know about you that you would want people to know? And you talked about, purpose and just what makes you, you said, if I could just be sitting at that table, if I could just be a part of this, that would bring you joy. You talked about your faith, but what's something that people really don't know about you that you would want them to know that they can't just Google and find out?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the motivator behind all of this for me is my faith. And that's important. And, but I don't believe that you have to have a faith to care about people. But for me, that is my motivator. That is the one thing that you would need to know about me for any of my life to make sense. If not, you would sit back and you give me all the credit and say, oh, it's awesome that you're working for a for-purpose company. It's great that you're involved in nonprofit. Good for you, Ben. And I would take that. Like, I like that. That feels good. I'm glad that I'm involved in something that people can celebrate. But it's not me. And it's also, like I said, it's a lot of the people that I surround myself with to help these things move forward. These are a bunch of people working really hard. And I'm lucky enough to be able to come out and talk to you about it. But I'm not the hardest worker on the team. I try to be. I'm not the most talented person on the team. I want to be. And there's people on my team that can do far greater things than I could ever do. Something about me personally that I would love for people to know is that I struggle, because I think a lot of times we can celebrate and you would see a lot of the joys to life, and you know, social media, you'd see the great things happening in my life. I struggle daily fighting feeling unworthy, fighting the feeling of feeling alone. Like I am the only one who struggles with the things that I struggle with. I'm the only one who feels isolated, the only one that at times, maybe this is a great note for small business owners and entrepreneurs. I got to speak at a great conference similar to this one with some amazing CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And it was interesting, in the back room, before we even went out on stage, everybody was talking about how inept they feel, how many times they've failed and struggled, and the things they don't know. I was like, wait, time out. You feel like you don't know things, you too? And what it did for me is it made me realize that in the midst of my confusion, in the midst of my inability to know everything, in the midst of my my failures in the business and the things that I say and do that aren't correct, that I'm not alone in that. And that doesn't mean that I'm not supposed to be in this position. It just means that I'm not alone in my desire to try to figure it out. So maybe the thing that I would want people to know is, to summarize that, is one, is I fight the feeling of being unworthy and untalented often. Daily. That is a thing I have to speak truth into my life, that you do belong here, that you can do this, this is for you. The second is that in my struggles and in my lack of knowledge and kind of trying to build the plane as I fly it when it comes to this business, I'm not alone in that some of the most successful, experienced people still feel that way. And maybe that's just like an encouraging note for anybody out there, is that if you are feeling that way right now during this time, especially, like I bet if people are honest, everybody has felt that at some point in time and is probably feeling that on a daily basis. And so you're not alone in that.
To stay there a little bit, we have some questions coming into the chat. What can you say as far as a silver lining to the pandemic?
Yeah, well, for us, I just had a board meeting today before I came, and we brought that question up. And I think for us, the pandemic did one of two things for us. One, it made us refocus, like I said. So we were moving forward quickly. We were investing. We were building new coffee shops. We were enhancing our subscription program. And COVID paused all of that and made us pull back and say, we have a great foundation for a lot of things, but now we need to refocus, not change our strategies, not change our business model, not completely shut it down, but refocus on how do we make this organization healthier? How do we make our employees healthier? Because they were struggling with things during this time. One was a refocus for us. I think another thing for me personally is I spent a lot of time traveling and speaking and advocating for Generous and for other things. I don't travel anymore. Like, you know, I'm not gone. This has been home for me. It's allowed me to tackle things that I've typically pushed off for years in Generous that I needed to start to consider. So it's kind of cleaning up. And honestly, it felt like COVID has forced us to clean up and remove some of the things that weren't effective and efficient, and to add in some processes that can allow us to maybe be healthier if this were to ever happen again. I feel like today, Generous is simpler than it was maybe 6 months ago. We've cut out a lot of the loose ends. I have a better vision, a better understanding of who we are. I mean, as the CEO, I need to understand who we are. And what I'm learning is as we move forward quickly, I was losing track of who we are and what we were doing. I think we've gotten simpler, and I think our whole organization now knows better who we are and what makes us great. And for if we left COVID, and that's what we learned, is our employees are more sold out than ever. They understand our business more than they ever have. And our executive team is refocused and more focused than we've ever been. I think that's a win. Still a lot of pain and still a lot of trauma. But I think if those are some takeaways, I think we would see that as being a silver lining.
Definitely. All right. Another question for you. How do you vet which organizations you give to and donate to? Is there a process? What does that look like?
Yeah. So some of the words that you've heard me say already. So one is, it has to be human focused. So it has to be dealing with humans. It has to fall in line with some of our pillars. Our pillars are clean water, healthcare, education, leadership, infrastructure, and then we do have a spiritual element to Generous. So if organizations fall in those 6 pillars and they're human focused, then we take the next step. Then we ask for their efficiency when it comes to what they're pursuing. So we do have to vet organizations. They have to be accomplishing the mission that they set out to do. I love the startups. I believe in the startups. But for us to be good stewards of our funds, we have to invest into organizations that are showing us proven models for that their model works, that their mission works. So they have to be effective. They have to be efficient with their funds. So they have to tell us what this money is going towards. Now, one thing that we get super happy about is I've been in the nonprofit world for a long time. I get super jacked if an organization comes to me and says, we need money for the paper and pens and for our executive salaries. Great. Do it. Like, take our money and go, because I know you need that. You need that to run an organization. You're never going to be what you hope to be if your executive is struggling to put food on the table. Or if they're so focused on fundraising for their salary, they can't focus on the organization. So to be effective, and they have to be efficient with their funds, and they have to be sustainable. So they have to have a long-term strategy. For example, one of our organizations that we partner with is involved in alleviating men and women from sex trafficking. And it's becoming more and more popular to talk about these days, which is great. I'm glad people are talking about it, because it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem around us in our neighborhoods even. But when you remove somebody from the trafficking world, there's a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of confusion, and their world has been rocked in ways that like no human should ever have their world rocked. And so we want to work with organizations that rehabilitate, that sit with them in their pain, that listen to their pain, and that will stay with them through the process of not only rescuing, but also then to discovery of who they are and their value and their purpose. So they have to be sustainable. In Honduras, it's building sustainable communities, that building these small businesses that can be passed off to the community once they become profitable, so that they can continue to thrive and build these businesses to be more successful than ever. So they have to be sustainable in their mission. They have to have a long-term focus.
Great, thank you. So we have a ton of, I guess there's a lot of chatter right now going on in the chat about Generous Coffee. You have got a lot of fans out there watching right now. Is there any sort of call to action, for lack of better words? Obviously, go get a cup or 10 of coffee. Is there anything else you want to say before we close out?
Come prepared for this. So if you're watching and you want to support, you can go to our website at generouscoffee.com. Look at our product. Just check it out. It is great coffee. I promise you that. Like, I guarantee that. But I've also created a coupon code. So if you type in event 15 at checkout, you get 15% off your purchase. So anybody out there watching, that is for anybody out there. I'll keep it open for a couple weeks. But event 15, get 15% off. But if you want to help, when trips can start going again, I would love to take anybody out there watching on a trip. We have a group going down whenever COVID releases. We have this a bunch of executives in Nashville, Tennessee. They are executives that have ran billion-dollar businesses, and they are a bunch of men and women whose kids are in high school and middle school, and because they run billion-dollar companies, they're not lacking for their own wealth. So they grow up in great neighborhoods and big houses, and the kids think that everybody drives a Maserati. And this group is going down with us to show their kids that the whole world doesn't operate the way they do. I would love for anybody out there who runs a small business, is working on a small business, who works for a small business, to come with us to Honduras or to wherever we go next. But on the best way right now, and I mean this, is just to go buy our product, to go to our coffee shops at Fifth and Santa Fe or Golden. You're going to drink coffee anyways. I always say, make it life-changing coffee. Just help us out.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
That went by fast. Thank you so much.
Are we done?
We're done. Our
That was
time is
awesome.
up. Our time is up. So I just want to thank everyone out there. Thank you again, Ben, for coming. And we have a really, really great closing keynote later on today. It is going to be at 5:30. And this is going to be founder of Rent the Runway, Rent the Runway. I almost couldn't say that. Jenny Fleece. So check us out at 5:30. Thank you again for attending, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.